Hi, this is Phil, and I'm here to tell you all about the Capes and Lunatics Patreon. Get early access to all of our interviews, including the monthly Chichester Chats with writer and comic book legend DG Chichester, new episodes of classic Capes and Lunatics shows, including The Quantum Zone, This, That, or the Third, and many, many more specials, all completely uncensored. Access starts for $3 a month, full video when you pledge $5 a month. Check out the link in our show notes or go to patreon.com/capesandlunatics. Hope to see you there. Hello, kids. Welcome back to another month of the Chichester Chats. I am Phil. Joining me, as always, is Lilith. And, of course, the man this whole thing is named after, the man who loves to play with hell and the devil. It is Mr. DG Chichester himself. How are you, sir?
I am good this morning, guys, although we need to always draw a very clear distinction between, our one type of devil and the other types. This is the fun devil. This is the daredeviling,
Yes, yes.
Not the scary one, not the other one.
Although, yes, I mean, we are going to talk Daredevil Tree of Knowledge, to get everyone prepared for Daredevil Black Armor coming in a month.
Coming very, very soon. My full-on media blast begins tomorrow. You will have 120 days of wacky posts about Daredevil Black Armor.
Oh, nice.
Like, I've been doing intermittent things, but now you'll get one a day, some of which will be quite... we'll see what people's reaction to them are. But but let's just say I put my Daredevil Black Armor toy to good use, and we'll leave it at that.
Yes, nice. But yeah, before we dive into the Daredevil, how's the Axel's Infernal Kickstarter going?
It's going. We were happy and excited to kind of get a designation of project we love from Kickstarter, kind of like day one or day two, which is sort of their recognition of something that they think has more creative energy or is kind of more together. So that was fun. So I immediately jumped in and, redid everything to say project we love. And still doing that to try to stay ahead of the curve because I had a lot of things set up. I guess in small part of my brain, I'd really hope for one of those fund it in 48 hours, type of moments, because that would be awesome. And then take the pressure off. It's moving along. I mean, we got a little over 2 weeks to still go. I think we're a little over a third of the way there, or maybe just about a third of the way there. So, I think it's tracking in that kind of, could happen, could not happen way. I'm leaning in the could happen way, and we're continuing the blast of stuff, the posts, letting people know about the rewards, updates, doing cross promotions with people. It's a lot of work. I mean, if anybody's thinking of doing it, it's definitely takes its time. But I'm excited about people's reaction that are backing it. They seem to dig what they're seeing. I changed up the original art offer. Originally, it was kind of going to be a random one. And then I decided after looking at it, we made it, you could pick your own. So it created a gallery and then told the people who had already picked it, go back to the gallery. You're not getting a random piece, claim one of these 15 or 16 pages for yourself. So it's that kind of learning thing, I think, as you go along to say, this is a better way of doing it and, keeping people involved. The worst part of it, though, which I did not, anticipate at all is just the amount of freaking spam you get. It is just.
Yeah.
And did you do one, Lilith? Have you ever done one?
No, but I've done projects kind of similar. Spam is
it's
really bad.
It's insane. Like the amount of badly worded. Your project is the most inspiring thing ever to grace the screens of mankind. Much help do I want to give to you to guarantee more backers?
Project with a K. Project with a K. Yeah.
Project with a K. The best one was, I have never before, seen a project that, and then it was like bracketed, insert a unique attribute here. That is, and so I'm like, man, just delete spam. But that's
you think by 2023 we would have had the spam thing figured out?
Well, I would have thought like Kickstarter would, at least like, because that's all coming through sort of their interface.
I think everyone gets that now, because even for just the podcast, I get spam where it's like, I can help you get more listeners, more subscribers, or
right.
Hey, you need help with merch, or need help with social media, or hey, editing, or I get all kinds of spam.
Yeah, everybody looks at it and says they could do it, and every now and again there's one that at least seems semi-professionally put together, so maybe they are.
Yeah, you don't know, because it's like, this is all spelled right and stuff. Yeah,
right. Maybe they are like a PR marketing sort of thing, but the ones that are just crud, I don't. Does anyone ever click on that?
I'm sure somebody. It's a numbers game, right? It's like when you join like the sales team. It's a numbers game, man. You just got to ask every single person. Eventually, somebody's going to say yes.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess that would be the way to do it, right? Anyway. If folks are interested, the link is right there. Bit.ly, /Axel's Infernal. Fun, supernatural adventure, first issue. Really kicking art and good rewards. So folks. I think folks will have a great time with it, so please check it out.
Yeah, I signed up, kid, so make sure this thing gets back. Make sure this thing gets back, because I want my comic and my mini poster, so make sure you back this thing. Yes!
I want your comic and mini poster, too,
yes.
So we're on the same page. All right. Thanks for that plug, that double plug.
All right, like we said, for the 25th episode this time, we're going to cover Daredevil Tree of Knowledge in honor of... I'm sure I know what we're talking about next time, Daredevil Black Armor #1. But yes, this time, Tree of Knowledge. So.
All right. Well, start in. What do you want to know?
So, the thought process, obviously. So,
I mean, all the digital piracy and stuff. I mean, this came straight from the Chichester files, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this was me, if anything, mainlining this stuff for so long. I mean, we've talked about kind of my research process at that point was, I'd spent way too long in the border books, Barnes and Noble, book stacks of like the sociology section. And I just, brought home stacks and stacks and stacks of, these books and early books, right? On like, virtual reality and all these types of things. And it said something to me in my head. I was already interested in digital technology. I remember, I think I'd mentioned at one point, like Mike Sines had come into the offices at Epic with an early Mac with this super crude animation of Iron Man flying upwards, which would become part of his pitch for his Iron Man Crash, one of the first digitally created books, where the art was actually done. And I was just soaking this stuff up. And then Wired Magazine and Mondo 3000, which was sort of like a psychedelic version of Wired Magazine, were starting to come out and both reflect the early Silicon Valley sort of culture, but also fuel it. If Wired Magazine's even still out now, it's this thin little magazine leaflet thing. In those days, it was this gigantic thing full of really expensive ads and also incredible articles. And I actually pulled up the mini review they did of this book. We could look at it later, but all this stuff was kind of going through my head. And as we were starting to think about, all right, what's the follow-up to Fall from Grace? How do you keep the energy going, right? What's the next big adventure? And sort of felt like we had to, keep the pumping of things up. Another big thing where a lot of stuff gets thrown at him, guest stars and big dangers to justify this. Well, let's call it armor at this point. You know,
Black armor, yes.
Black armor, no less. And so all these things that were going on in technology culture were really resonating with me. Not only the technology itself, but a lot of the socio-political aspects of it. You know, what's going to happen when this technology gets to a point where it starts to create a separating divide? Now, most people weren't even on the internet at that point, right? The internet to most people, if anything, was probably AOL, America Online. And you know, behind the bookshelves at Borders or Barnes & Noble, there might be one of those big, you know, Internet for Dummies kits, you know, where you'd go home with a floppy disk and a book of like crude commands that you type in and maybe get yourself on a 14.4 modem, you know, for a really slow click up. But so I think I was ahead of my thinking, but there was
ahead, by the way. No, and I'll talk about it in a second, but like, I don't want to butt in, but like, was it intentional, like fall of grace, but the cause of fall of grace is eating from the tree of knowledge? Was that any thought process, or was that just
no, it was.
Okay.
No, I mean, definitely. I mean, it was, yes. I mean, the biblical aspect of it, you know, and not that we were making it a biblical tale, but certainly that whole big sense of what does it mean, you know, to have this access, you know, to knowledge power and technology power.
And then to extrapolate tree of knowledge to Tower of Babel.
Right, I didn't know if I got that far, but I should have, you know. And,
well, the cyber terrorism, right? Kind of, sort of. Like you're building that ladder.
and you know, one of the quotes that really resonated with me, William Gibson, who is you know, a big cyber punk author, you know, or just kind of like a science fiction, you know, author, had this quote that the street finds it's own uses for things. Mm-hmm. Which really stuck with me. And, you know, I can't remember what novel, you know, he had that in, but it's that sense that, okay, the technology is built for this, or it's built for a hospital. It's built for, you know, an ATM. It's built for whatever, but the street will take it apart and they will decide what they want to do with it. And to me, that was a really unique spin on Daredevil being this street character. Right. And I just started to think about, okay, well, what happens if we push this typically noir detective, noir street fighter character into this noir tech sort of area where he's learning about it through hackers, you know, crude hackers, street technology. And then that's leading to this bigger adventure and knowledge about Clipper chips and, you know, the MacGuffin that, you know, Hydra or, you know, Baron von Strucker and, you know, his team are after. So that was kind of the weird thought process, Lilith, that was going along, because I didn't ever see the sense of just telling a straight on technology story with Daredevil. But that idea that the street finds its own uses for things is definitely what triggered, you know, could we do this in this way? And then from there, starting to generate, okay, all the different little weird technology plays became the villains, like System Crash, which is the group who, again, in typical Chichester fashion, I never did anything with again, but were a pretty, I think, awesome like group in their own way. You know, each one was a reflection almost of a different technology type, and then they became, and then you could use them because they were these grungy, weird little characters reflecting things like, you know, like muds and pixel morphing and all this other kind of crazy stuff.
I love the restraint not to spell crash with a K, by the way.
Much is the same reason
I've never. It's the 90s, so I was just like, oh, he used restraint. Great.
I yes, you know, and have always pulled back from spelling magic with a K as well somehow. I don't know how I'm able to contain myself. And yes, you know, so I somehow I pulled back.
Yes, considering it is not Baron Strucker's IT department. Yes, that was incredible.
Like Nova, Kilobyte. I love it. Like as
Kilobyte. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't
and
that
like
great?
Really into computers. Like I used to be a Mac girl because like that's the easiest way to learn. Well, back in the day, it was the easiest way to learn DDoS. You know,
right?
I used to be a Mac girl. You just get in the commands and it's just right there for you. So like, no, I really appreciate this story. I think this was like one of the. Like after like the very first Daredevil book I ever picked up was the one where he's in the yellow suit and he's like, I can sense the colors, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna come back to that. And then I think in like 2001, this is like one of the first other Daredevil books that I picked up. So
I think this is this is not as popular a story as Fall from Grace, but
I don't know why.
I've always felt that this is a better story. I feel this is like a tighter story structurally. It sort of ties together. It's still insane, like in its own way. Like there's all this stuff going on, and a ton of stuff is kind of happening. But I always felt like it syncs together more logically than Fall from Grace, which again always felt to me like a small fission device, like ready to kind of explode if like the molecules just vibrate a little too much harder and the whole thing's going to blow up.
What do you think too? I mean, you consider this a better story because again, it's another big event. You got a ton of guest stars, but Fall from Grace, you're kind of transitioning Matt to the Jack Batlin thing. Here, it's Jack Batlin day one because like even this first issue, I mean the one scene that's stayed in my head for 30 years. Is the ATM scene. I mean, I can't walk
I love that.
I can't walk up to an ATM. I still if I walk up to an ATM, I'm like, that don't look shady, does it? But I mean, but just him with the gun too, where he's like, I have to put the bed all the rumors that it could be the original Daredevil. So he's like pointing the gun at the guy. Yeah, that image still in my head to this day.
That's cool.
Well, skimmers are still a thing, Phil.
Oh yeah, I still double check that. Yeah,
but even at that point, I think, I would say that whole skimmer idea, using these fake little devices in front of an ATM and grabbing people's credit cards and that kind of stuff, like that was probably oddball to most people. People probably weren't even thinking about that, and yet that was another piece of the info gathering. Okay, here's some cool stuff. What do I do with it? Oh, here's a place to use it. And yeah, the gun thing was definitely a way to sort of turn the dial up and play that out differently. And then introducing so much of the Batlin persona and his quote unquote supporting cast, which never, got, sort of the play that maybe I intended. But maybe they will.
That's what
we were just kind of talking about that from the speculation from all your social media posts and things like that. We were just speculating.
Yeah, I was going to say, so Jack Batlin's supporting cast may be making a future appearance somewhere.
There may be moments where, characters who, get a better play out than they did, when things were cut short. And certainly that was a weird part of getting, to this newer story was that immediate recognition. As soon as I got off the phone with, Devin Lewis, the editor, is like, oh, damn, I wrote myself into this corner, didn't I? And if we're doing the costume, then it's not like the costume could be anywhere except in that zone of time because somebody decided to destroy it so totally. But maybe there's a way to ultimately like foist the idea that while he destroyed it, his other persona actually made a second one and hid it like in a Green Goblin closet somewhere, so they could decide to do a story without being tied to the Batlin thing. But yeah, I mean, it was establishing that it was playing on a lot of different levels. And I love Captain America. I love that character. I love playing with him. I love doing that Blood and Glory story that I had done with Punisher. And to me, he was the perfect foil, second seat on this story to kind of have that interaction with Daredevil on a certain level. And look at things both of them coming from an extraordinarily committed point of view, but divisive, different at the same time.
Well, yeah, I think Captain America works, for the whole, this new technology is just so alien to him because, I mean, he was alive before television, so it's like all of a sudden you have all this computerized,
Right. But for everybody,
the government for the longest time was like, actually, they won't tell you this, but like it's kind of a known fact. They were like really behind. Like even if you look at the laws for like quote unquote cybercrime up until maybe 2010, they were so far behind they could never catch up. So I find it like, that's kind of how I look at this angle, and it kind of makes sense that Cap would take kind of that perspective, and like it gives him the perspective of, oh, there are different ways to do things because there's different kinds of calibers of criminals now thanks to this. And I love that you use this the definition, like who came up with the cyberpunk like definition right at the beginning there. Like, that's great.
And I have to thank you too, as like a big fan of Mark Grunwald's run on Captain America, because this was towards the end of his run that you wrote this very, it was in the spirit of Mark Grunwald Captain America, where he's like, I'm not just going to like, goose step in formation with everyone else, calling for martial law and stuff, because these days I feel like they write Captain America like that. But yeah, back then.
Oh, that's no, I loved Mark's run. I thought Mark's run was, very, very human, which is he wrote him where it's like, I wear the flag, but I'm not, the government's little stooge. I fight for everyone's American dream and stuff. And, right. Which is the more interesting thing, because then that gets into the nuance, and that's, I think, and that debate. I remember not weird scene, but a scene I enjoyed a lot, where they're having a debate almost about like, well, what does it mean, when the technology gets to a place, where large, rich overlord people get to shut down an entire town and, crush people. Jeez, what's happening now?
Yeah.
I mean, if nothing else, this story was, 25, 30 years ahead of its time in terms of like, I think nailing a lot of things to come. And unfortunately, I was savvy enough to sort of like tell a story like this at that time. I wasn't savvy enough to figure out how to profit from it all and, make boatloads of Silicon Valley money or something.
I mean, if this thing was any more current day, you would have mentioned AI. That's I think the only thing missing from this story.
Yeah. It's totally. I mean, it was but that wasn't, I guess, something I came across, but all the other things like the MUDs, the multi-user dungeons, and those types of gaming, and how do you play the gaming into it, all became.
It's a gateway. Little do people know, a lot of people get radicalized that way. So you're definitely ahead of your time.
That's true. I mean, there's been stories, people have been pulled into that, but also just, I think, pulled into it. It's also an empowering thing, which is a little bit the one character. They were all so weird. Wirehead, I think, was the one who was the mud one. Who was. He lived in that world, right? And then everything he saw was as if he was in a game environment. He was a character manipulating swords and shields, and then he could, but he'd always talk and act like he was in that area, but then he could manifest those things in the real world. But there was always something empowering about gaming too, right? People do get radicalized, Lilith, but the thing I was thinking of it from, while he was a villain, I can't remember the exact thing it was, but it was that sense that people could step into avatars, people could step into personas in gaming worlds.
James Cameron owes DG Chichester money, confirmed.
Well, they could become something more than themselves, right?
Yeah.
The person who is, and I was seeing that even on again, the interactions online were on these crappy modems, on AOL or
IRC.
IRC or Genie or CompuServe, which would suck money out of you. They were billing you by the second when you were online. But there were, you even saw the early version of trolls, but also people who would be empowered. There was this young woman I remember, who I would have this dialogue with on these chat boards, and, about comics and such. And at one point I tried to get Marvel involved in it. I said, I'm having these conversations in these chat boards. What is this internet thing? No one's ever going to do anything with that. That's nothing. Whatever, move on. But she was really so articulate, so like engaged, these long running things. And I did a signing, and she showed up, and she was, hi, and whatever her name was, but she was the meekest, most, she said maybe 3 words and walked away. And it was like, wait, like, you're a cool person. You have all these dialogues, but that was the thing that empowered her. That was her, her world. So finding ways to kind of show how those characters, how that technology was empowering people through these villain characters, especially, was a lot of fun. I have a feeling I would have found a way to bring these guys back, even though I destroyed them all by the end of the story, just because they were really weird and different and interesting.
Well, I mean, the one guy, you had the brother come in, the Kilobite gets killed in the first issue, and the brother comes in to take his place, so you could have did something like that, yeah.
Right. I mean, that was intentional.
Yeah.
I did mean to, not, that wasn't my usual, like, thing of, like, oh, look, here, introduce a character and kill him. I mean, that was an intentional thing to get the brother, brought in by Strucker and introduce those elements. So that was sort of story structure thinking.
But yeah, I mean, Strucker was much more subtle in this story, where it's like, the system, the authority killed your brother. Yeah, you're gonna let him do that? Yeah, so.
Yeah, and that was my ideal for Strucker in a way. He was, I loved playing with that character, and that whole not manifest destiny, but sort of that, that whole thinking through of him as doing this to kind of just create so much anarchy that it will strip out all the undesirables, right? Only the strong will survive. I mean, that was the whole reason for it. It was just, I want to introduce the worst of the worst so that they all, it's an early purge. Talk about money. I want some purge money too. It's,
oh yeah. And like,
I was just thinking that actually.
I think he was Strucker telling Captain America, he's like, oh yeah, me and the Red Skull will embrace new ways to do what we do. He's like, you and Fury.
You have to.
Yeah.
Evil evolves faster.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. You stick with your shield and we'll be over here with our,
with our drones.
Exactly. And the other thing that got dropped when you left the book is the whole Karen subplot. Like, they did nothing with that. And all right, my big question: we know you got pushed back on Surgeon General for all the blood and stuff. Did you get pushed back for the word, and I quote, teledildonics?
No,
no. Somebody's just like, I don't even know what that word is.
I don't know. They're probably like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is.
People going.
I don't think Ralph had any idea what I was doing.
I don't know what that is.
I sort of felt a little guilty about that, even at the time, saying, should I put this in here? Because Ralph was, Macchio, the editor, was so supportive of this story. He was fascinated by it. Like, he was probably the Luddite of all Luddites. Everybody had early, and this will sound like a teledildonics joke, Wang computers, in their office or on the editorial floor, which were early, sort of enterprise level, word processors and things, very crude to use. And then the Mac offices started to get, I think, early Macs, and every office maybe had their early Mac where they could, do some early email or at least some typesetting and, send files around. And Ralph wouldn't even have that in his office. He was typewriter and IBM Selectric, all the way. In that mansion. But he was fascinated by this story, and he was fascinated by these villains. He said to me like multiple times, how interesting they were and how different they were, just because they represented things and used things that he wasn't familiar with. And most people probably weren't familiar with them, but they were very fresh to him. So I think that whole, teledildonics thing was definitely, just me sort of being in this, well, I'm telling this story and I will tell it like, with all the wordplay and proper phrasing and such, not trying to slip something by anybody so much as that hubris of like, I'm an authority on this and I'm telling this story the way it should be told, which was still stupid. But but since nobody except you has brought it up in all this time,
okay.
I think I didn't savagely burn people too much.
I thought the whole Karen thing was interesting too, because again, Matt's become Jack Batlin. You easily could have been like, yeah, we're not going to see Foggy and Karen for a while, after the whole funeral, because again, the whole thing starts with Matt Murdock's funeral. But again, you bring that whole thing in, and again, I would have loved to see a conclusion to that, but again, once you left, they completely dropped that. There's no mention of it again or nothing.
Well, it's funny in this Wired review was like a 1-column thing. It wasn't a huge review, but I remember because I was this voracious reader of Wired, and I remember reading it and like I'm at the top of it saying, "Wow, this sounds pretty good." And then I realized it's about Tree of Knowledge. Well, I wrote the thing, but toward the end of it, they even say Tree of Knowledge is everything from a maniacal villain at play in a citywide mud to a down on her luck actress trying to avoid a fledgling erotica outfit that is trading in cyberporn. Mm-hmm. So they recognized it and they picked up on it. And I mean, the intention was always, right, because comics are cyclical in this way, is to get Matt back to being Matt, right? He wasn't going to stay Jack Batlin forever. I wasn't so invested or so in love with the Jack Batlin persona.
And I don't think they'd let you do that forever. Yeah.
You know, whatever. Not forever. And I wasn't interested in that. Jack Batlin was a purpose, you know, which is, you know, spoiler alert, like Black Armor, because it takes place in this time frame, does not reestablish like Matt Murdock all of a sudden. It can't. That's not the continuity. But it does explore Jack Batlin a little bit more the way that I intended it to, which is that this is a persona, and what does this persona mean? And what does this represent? And how does Matt Murdock, the incredibly intelligent, if raw, you know, don't mess with me type of character from Hell's Kitchen that he is, you know, what does he do with this? Why does he have this character? You know, what does he play it out? So instead of playing it out over 25 issues, you know, getting to issue 350 or wherever I was aiming for, you know, to have things come back around. That was probably my goal in life. If I had one, you know, was to play out this Batlin thing. And then at some point things happen and everybody realizes Matt's there or Matt reveals it. And we not go back to status quo, but we go back to something of a sort. So keeping all the characters in play was important because that's still his world. And that's part of the supporting cast of Daredevil, right? Foggy and Karen and hopefully then some of these other characters I was introducing would have gotten some root. Maybe they would have become a little bit more important to the overarching, Daredevil, you know, mythos, even the hacker in Tree of Knowledge, this, you know, young Sinclair Spectrum, you know, named after early computers, you know.
Yeah.
She was a kind of an interesting character to me. Maybe I would have brought her back, you know, and if he ever needed a technology question answered or, you know, something even in a story that wasn't as heavily into it as Tree of Knowledge, I could have played her out. But yeah, you play out the supporting cast, and just so you can continue to enrich them and make them interesting. And you know, the whole back to Born Again idea that Karen had gone off wanting to become something big and successful and positive and got dragged into this world of pornography, and then that had demeaned her and damaged her, and then she pulled herself out of it or crawled out of it, or Matt had helped pull herself out of it. What does that mean? Do you just go back to sort of like being Karen Page, you know, or do you do something with that? You know, so she decided to do something with that. And I felt that was one of those great moments of an extension of a character, right? She told me what she wanted to do. Scott wasn't happy about that. You know, he was uncomfortable with that storyline aspect. So we not that it went, you know, weird, stranger places, you know, it was never going to go into you know, a very over sexualized place, but I remember him not really being very comfortable with even what we were doing there.
Again, I didn't see it as it was going to be over sexualized. Just, you know, she could bust these guys who, you know, she kind of discovers are kind of even up to like illegal stuff. So.
Right. And again, that was a thing that was coming out of the stuff I was reading, right? There were those, like, now, obviously, the more people got involved in technology and using this, it's even more horrible with things they're keeping on their drives or their cloud services or their, you know, their, especially I'm talking about like child pornography, not, you know, accepted adult pornography, but, you know, so, these little aspects of that, you know, to play out, okay, somebody has something on a disc and they're doing these things and they're trading it that way. That was all right. This is stuff that's going on. How do you play that? How do you play that out as a secondary story? And who knows if it had become an interesting enough something, maybe that would have developed into a story, a story, right? It wouldn't have just been Karen's story, but maybe there would have been this, and probably there would have been, I'm thinking about it now, right? There would have been, move that from the B story to the A story, and she meets the new Daredevil, right? Because he gets pulled into something. And that could have been one of the alternating stories that me and Ralph were talking about, which was that there would be big stories like Fall from Grace and Tree of Knowledge, where you throw everything at the wall, and he's fighting over the 59th Street Bridge and jumping onto cloaked ships and and big fights and arboretums and stuff like that. And then there would be smaller stories, which is what Wages of Sin, Alan, Smithy's great tale, was supposed to represent, right? That was supposed to be the more, call it street level Martin Scorsese story. So that was kind of meant to be the rhythm that we were hoping to play out. Big story, little story, big story, little story. So I could have seen that cyber pornish story with Karen becoming one of those smaller stories.
But yeah, I mean, this was another big one. Fall from Grace was a big one. This was another big story. I mean, with all the guest stars, like you said, Iron Fist, Gambit. We even got
Elektra.
Yes, Elektra.
Slipping in the Chase and Elektra. I was like, I see you. I see you.
Yes, we should have got a DG Chichester Elektra series. We're wrong.
Yeah, it's like following up on that mini story, I think. The miniseries story.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's like, he slipped that in there.
There
Was there any pushback on that at all? Or
pushback in, how do you mean?
For Elektra in the Chase? Because some people say there wasn't. Okay.
No. I mean, I owned Elektra. I owned Daredevil, at that point in time. Not, in the sense that,
you can
with Ralph, I mean, it was within Ralph's office, and it was part of the.
And you were the Daredevil
story.
writer, yeah.
And I was the Daredevil writer. So, I mean, we were the ones talking about what we were going to do. Oh, there's going to be all these other Daredevil series, and there's going to be, all these secondary series, and there's going to be these mini series, and there's going to be another Elektra series, and all this kind of stuff. It was all part of the plan, as the Joker would say. And of course, you know what happens when the Joker makes plans.
And it's always a huge out of control story when you get a Gregory Wright fill-in issue.
Yeah, but we talked about that before. I should ask Greg. He's got a much better memory than I do on that stuff. I don't know why the hell we did that.
Okay, next we need conversation with Greg and DG.
Yeah,
we got the Fabian, now we need the Greg one.
I don't know. I got to that's come up a few times. We've talked about that, and I do not remember why that would have been plugged in the middle of it like that. It doesn't make sense.
That's what I was going to say. Was it just a scheduling thing? That's what I always thought it was. Maybe it was just a scheduling thing or something.
I can't think that I was off or Scott was off with something like this. I mean, when we took the break for Root of Evil to do the Elektra miniseries, that was definitely a specific break. To be able to go and focus on that and schedule wise. Although in retrospect, there should have been no reason I couldn't have probably done it all, but who knows where I was at that time. But I don't know why that Tree of Knowledge, whatever the hell they called it, interlude or, thing comes up. It doesn't make any sense. I know he enjoyed it. I know he had a ball playing with the characters. He said that a few times, he liked those characters.
Oh yeah, it seemed like he had a good time with it. He was even slipping a Silver Sable cameo in there.
Yeah. It's always if you got toys to play with, definitely always play with them.
Oh yeah, Lilith. I feel like Gregory Wright has some tea to spill on DG Chichester. He knows some secrets. I think.
Oh, he's got a much more if not a steel trap memory for all this stuff. He's got a steel trap imagination. In other words, he'll speak with the authority as if it was definitely the way and. Who knows if it was or not, If I or somebody else can't remember to dispute it, it sounds pretty good. So let's go with that. But
and I mean, you mentioned all the 90s. I mean, we got all the 90s guest stars, but again,
including Gambit,
Iron Fist. But again, it wasn't like out of control. It's like they show up for a little bit and, it's not like, I'm sorry to hurt you, Maximum Carnage or anything where, 20 people show up and they stay
Why
there.
Why didn't I bring in Carnage? Why didn't I do the Carnage thing? Yeah, some of those were a little forced, I think. We were definitely trying to replay what we thought were the operating system to stay in Tree of Knowledge.
Oh, operating system. See what we did there.
Of what was successful about Fall from Grace, which was, big adventure, throw, Matt into a completely, complex, complicated situation, which he has to then navigate out of and, in some smart and interesting ways. Dial everything up and then use guest stars as like some sales drivers, so some of them work better than others, but probably like Gambit was probably like a real, can we get Gambit? Yeah, you can use Gambit. Okay, great. So looking for who's popular and running with them as much as anything.
Matt, I think you mean that social engineer Jack Batlin.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry. Social engineer Jack Batlin. And I do. There's plenty of little cues, not clues, that do appear in a month or so in a Black Armor. So I read my my history pretty well. But but as I told Joe Illich, you'll have to wait a little bit before you get to these are the facts, they're indisputable lines from Fall from Grace and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, I just thought it was a really fun story to write. It was one of those stories that just felt not, there's almost like so much stuff I wanted to pack into it, that it was being more choiceful or making choices rather, to say what's going to work the most. Because there were just so many other little things I could have put in there in terms of the socio-technology interesting aspects of what comes next. What comes next when this technology breaks wide, and which it hadn't yet. And maybe that was, part of the reason the story didn't resonate as well is it was just, I don't think it's told strange. I think it's told pretty cleanly, but it's definitely like, what is this world?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't like for the lay person, I guess, because like you said, not too many people actually had personal computers and stuff like that. Yeah.
So it was pushing that, and it was also, it was pushing against expectations, which is purposely what I wanted to do, of what a Daredevil story could be. Right?
No, it's great juxtaposition for what came before it, and that's what I appreciated. You weren't just resting on your laurels with that. You were like, come on, let's do something totally different.
Yeah,
I appreciated that.
Yeah, and to me, thinking of Daredevil as a what am I going to bring to Daredevil that's different or continually different? And not that Daredevil was ever meant to become a cyberpunk book, but again, the best uses or thinking about cyberpunk, not going into a dystopian future,
but just practical application.
Right. And then, so what's the cyberpunk of the street? What's that aspect of our technology?
And his suit kind of like, lays the groundwork. So it's like, it's not that big of a jump, like people say to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, you get all the technological stuff in here, and plus you're building up. It's Jack Batlin day one. You're back, you're building that whole world up too.
Right. Yeah, and there could have been great places to play that out. Yeah, this would have been a great Black Armor story, but I told a different Black Armor story too, because
So did you figure out for Tree of Knowledge you needed another issue? Because the first issue it says 1 of 5. Meanwhile you got 6. We got 6 Chichester issues and a Greg Wright fill-in.
And a Greg Wright fill-in.
Yeah,
issue.
so
I think I did. Yeah, I think I started to think it was going to be a 5-issue series, and then that was probably like definitely we were packing so much stuff in, and it wasn't adding any cost to it because we were just continuing the run in the regular book, but it did feel like it needed a little bit more space to kind of open up and play it out in the way that it did, and it had a more satisfactory kind of conclusion, and letting things breathe and not get forced, at all.
I mean, was that all? Was there ever any pushback for stuff like that where I feel like, oh, I need another issue, or they're just like, no, go ahead. I mean, because you were the monthly writer anyway, so
yeah. If it was a mini series, there would have been.
Yeah.
In other words, if we had set this up to be, say, a 5-issue mini series, and suddenly in the middle of the 5-issue mini series, I was to say, I need another issue. Be like, well, good luck with that. That's a great imagination you have. Go put that to work. That's not going to happen. Because that would have been budgeted for 5 issues, and that would have been solicited for 5 issues, and costs and everything else would have been proportioned out, that way. Black Armor was originally going to be a 5-issue series, and then sales and promotion and everything else, have factored in these things sell better as 4-issue series. So then I had to go back in and rewrite it to be 4 issues, which was a good weekend. But
you did it in a weekend? Wow.
But Devin, again, the editorial guys have been great, and they came back with like, I think this is, they weren't able to redline it quite as much as I think they wanted to. They sort of offered to take a first pass at it and say, this is how you can reconfigure, because cutting an entire issue is not like cutting a page or cutting a scene.
Yeah.
You're changing all the pacing, you're changing all the cliffhangers and that kind of stuff. But he keyed into what it needed to be, and then he sort of was able to say, this is what I think the flow could work as for 4 issues. And I was like, I got it. Let me just take it. And I just ran with it. And because I'd been working on it for a while, I think I did do it very quickly in about a weekend. But no, because this was just part of the regular run on Daredevil, Phil, they would just say, all right, we're going to shift the story, into continuance, which in continuity comics, that's not going to like really rankle anybody. I mean, there's plenty of stories that have bloated along for way too many issues, and there's many stories that have like
we talk about that all the time because they that's the trades. That's just the practical aspect of comics.
Right.
You just have to take that.
Right. And there's stories that like plant the seeds of something and then nothing happens with it. I remember this X-Men issue one time. I can't remember which one it was. And like, there was like a set aside scene, and suddenly like the Brood was there. The Brood eggs were on the Earth or something. It was like, pickup trucks driving through the desert, and like, and then you see these Brood eggs. You're like, oh shit, it's going to be like, a Brood story, their alien, type of, riff. And then nothing ever happened. Kept flipping through the issue and kept flipping through the next issues. Where's the friggin' Brood? And, that whole thread just went up in smoke. So, and nobody balks because it's, like I said, it's the ongoing process of issue to issue.
Oh yeah, I remember the penultimate issue of this. Take a drink, Lil. Where Daredevil comes up out of the water or whatever, and I'm just like, oh, there's one more issue. Then we're getting another issue of this, yes.
Yeah, that's again probably. I was having a good time with it. It was, it was just, there was great confrontation. There was the villains were great to throw up against him. They all had their own little, riff, and he got to be clever. I think at the end, to the extent that Murdoch and Daredevil are clever in outwitting these guys, and sort of turning the tables on them, not just beating them into submission, but actually being able to, think it through and then put certain things in motion. And I always liked that idea of him just introducing total disorder into things in order to like, just find the angle, right? It's stirring the pot. And I think that even goes back to the last rites, the fall of the Kingpin story. It is him stirring the pot. It's him just poking and prodding and shifting things into place so that they're all going to explosively go up in the right way.
I do like that Strucker even brought that up with this story. He's like, oh, if you are the same guy, you owe me a big thanks for helping you, take down the Kingpin.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just I've always wanted to be like, oh, what was he going to do with Jack Batlin if he had more time? I guess we're going to find out. I know.
We all manifested it.
It's all spoiler territory now.
Yeah. I mean, that's not a huge spoiler. I think you have to figure that is the case, and it's and it's not like I'm playing out the Batlin story. Oh, because I hadn't plotted it out that far. I thought I had time to figure it all out, but again, Batlin represented a not a MacGuffin, but a story plot element of a specific purpose, right? It was meant to be something that Matt was using, because of his artifice, that he was dead, but it was meant to then show Matt the importance of the real two sides of him, being, Matt Murdock, the lawyer, and Daredevil, the vigilante, and how much they needed each other in exactly that way and exactly that balance. And not that he was using Batlin as an excuse or, to get away from that, but that was a way to sort of have have a balancing point between the two where he could make some considerations. Not in a scene where he would like say, let me think about my Matt Murdock persona. Let me think about my Daredevil persona in a funny voice. But that was what it was for. That was, so I could then explore that and then have him get back to being Matt Murdock. But so now in this story, I'm not suddenly saying, oh, here's the untold Jack Batlin stuff I've been wanting to tell for years. Here's the untold stuff I wanted to tell about these characters he meets in Alphabet City. That's not been in my head. But now that I have to use them, they have to come to life. They have to be part of the flow of this story. Otherwise, I'm totally ignoring the world I started to build. And then I'm also just trying to force fit them into things. So they came to serve good purposes in this new story because they told me they had to.
I mean, it makes sense. Like you were saying, like, he was kind of, he had to be more smart, more cunning, because it's like he doesn't have the cushy law degree or anything to like fall back on or anything. And just the whole thing with Elektra, it's like, he says, I want to build some kind of life. Yeah, I can't be Matt, but I want to build some kind of life, because, basically she was offering, no, you could stay here. And he's like, basically be Daredevil 24/7.
Right. Which she's fat. Right. Because she's fine being Elektra 24/7. So it's, Elektra's Elektra. So that's all fine by her. So what's the problem, Matt?
And it's just the whole thing. I think when you have him, he has that one small room with all this, whatever stuff he has of Matt's left. And he's just like, there's even a danger of being, a new Daredevil, but it's like, it's just pride. It's like, I built this thing, I built this thing up from, I've literally bled for this thing. I've sweated for this thing,
Right. Yeah. And, you got to keep some aspect of yourself, hidden away. You can't just like get rid of it all. And I think it is. Matt Murdock is a very prideful character, right? Pride comes before the fall, right? I mean, that's the whole thing that leads him on and also gives him power and arrogance and swagger in the courtroom and on the rooftops and all those sort of things. It's not a meek character, even when he's not wearing the horns. And that's part of, I think, the interesting thing about it. I don't look at it like a lot of division between the two of them. Maybe, I don't know if I ever did. Probably I did more, but less now, I think. I think there's just that sort of sense of, he puts the suit on to, because it comes with a few advantages, even the red jammies, let alone the black armor. But I think that swagger and that don't mess with me is there, whether, he's at the defense table or in an alleyway. I think there's,
Well, yeah, I always found that interesting, because it's like, yeah, I think that, he doesn't, a lot of times he doesn't think of it, Matt and Daredevil as two different people, but it's like, as Matt Murdock, he was a lawyer who was supposed to live by the letter of the law, but then, I go out at night and, and serve vigilante justice. Now with Jack Batlin, there's not that, that the two flip sides of the coin. It's basically like, Jack Batlin can just do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
So there's not that governor there where it's just like, no, maybe we better pull back. It's like, no, you don't have to. No.
That's true. And I think the lack of that governor is, which is a great word in this aspect, is that would have been something to play out more. I'm not playing that out.
Yeah.
Because this is not meant to be a Jack Batlin story. Now what I'm telling, I'm using Batlin in just the ways I felt I needed I needed him to get into this aspect of the story. But that's very true, Phil. Ultimately, that would have been the thing about him, right? Even though he was supposed to play out things, and he does so even in this Tree of Knowledge story to some extent. Batlin was supposed to be the social engineer, this con man. He's playing the soft cons, not trying to hurt anybody, but to get information, right? Get information about the street, get information about what's going on, so that he could potentially then do, good.
But even at the end of the day, a lawyer, no offense, I have plenty in my family and plenty of friends. They are kind of into the soft con period. Like, well, that's totally. Kind of law.
Totally. So. Right. There's a social engineering aspect to law, right? To being a defense counsel.
Jury picking and exactly.
All of it, right. Understanding people, reading people, leading people to the right place. That is
mission.
Right. I mean, what does con man mean? Con man is
confidence.
Exactly. It's not that I'm tricking you, right? That's the key thing to understand about con men is I'm not tricking you. I'm building up confidence in you, building up confidence that you will be rich, that you will be successful, that together we will do this. And what does a lawyer do? A good lawyer is doing the same thing.
Totally going to get you off, brother. You're not going to be doing 25 years of life.
It's going to be fine.
I just need that $100,000 retainer, man.
Just say yes. Just say yes. So, but that would have been still a bit ungoverned, right, with Batlin more. And that would have been something to play out and explore, and have him realize, I need the definition. I need the guardrails of Matt Murdock, attorney at law.
Is it because of his Catholic guilt? Is that what it is?
Sure, there's aspects of that, I think. But, I mean, his faiths are, and this is one of my, favorite little scenes in this new one, is his faiths are the courtroom and the church, right? Those are the two faiths. And one is about reason and one is about believing. And so, how do you balance what you get from each of those, rationale on the one side and redemption on the other side. And so, but they're equally important to him. And then he has to find his balance, between them. And that's part of what maybe fuels, that's part of what fuels the dichotomy and the guilt but
Jack Batlin was his third space.
Yeah, for something. It was a device. It was a writer's device that, never got its day in the sun. And he's not getting its big day in the sun now, in the sense that, like, oh, I'm telling a Jack Batlin story. I want to tell a Matt Murdock story.
Yes.
But I'm telling a Matt Murdock story by use of this thing that's there, whether I wanted it to or not. If they had given me some magic pill and said, tell a Black Armor story that doesn't take place then, I probably would have taken that magic pill. It would have been like the whole red pill or blue pill. Take the black pill and not have to worry about any of this other stuff. But I set this table for myself, and I'm very happy with the way that the meal is being served. So
we're chomping at the bit, sir. We're starving.
Yes. Again, we're going to give thanks, kids, because that comes out the week of Thanksgiving, right? That's what I said. We're going to give thanks for this. Yeah,
it literally comes out the day before Thanksgiving,
yes.
Which is weird. Yeah, so I gotta drag my mom to the comic book shop. My mother is more excited about this than when I wrote comics for real. I don't know what it's about it. She's really excited about this. So I don't think she's never been in a comic bookstore.
Oh, so. That is so cute. You totally need to record that and put that on social media.
Yeah, you're right. Yes.
Mom's first time in a comic book
shop, and then picking the comic off the shelf. You're right, Lilith. I will capture that. Just for the fun of that.
Wait, why are there more than one cover here?
Yeah, exactly. Which one do I pick up? Who knows? But no, ma'am. That one's more expensive. That's the variant one. We're charging, Do they charge more for the variant covers? I assume they do, like comics.
Sometimes they do.
Because they only get like a handful or like a few, so they got to order like 100 of one to get one.
Yeah, some of them it's like 100 variant, or I
think the 1 in 25 is usually the same price. So
yeah, I think so.
The book is
the higher up you go, yeah. Like I was going to 1 in 50, 1 in 100. Those are a little more expensive. Usually back $1 or $2.
I was going to say, are they going to do any like cardstock covers? Because sometimes that's like $1 or $2 more. Yeah.
Not that I've seen.
Break out the mortgages, kids.
Yeah, I've just seen the variant, like the 4 or 5 variants for this first one, and then I think there's 2 maybe for the next, the next 3 or whatever. But I don't even know if we'll ever see them. I said, are we going to get these variant covers? And they were like, yeah, somebody used to handle that before COVID, but we're not really sure. So I was laughing with Netho. I said, we're going to have to go and find these on our own.
Oh, damn it. I usually don't buy more than one cover. Even if I just buy one of the variants, I'll usually just buy one copy. I have to pull a little hellfire on this one and buy all the covers.
Yeah, I've already budgeted for that. So
they're good covers. Even the Howard the Duck cover, which I'm not a big fan of, is kind of fun, but it's weird. I don't know.
That's definitely the one I'm going to have you sign when I
that one's just strange. I don't know what that one is. I'm really excited for the 3D one though, because the 3D one I just think is the one that looks like it will actually encourage people to do cosplay with this costume because it looks so done. I could see somebody looking at that seriously and saying, I can build that.
Nice.
I want to see that signature on that Howard the Duck cover. He'll sign, be like, I don't know what
I'm gonna have it framed. You better believe it.
I don't know what the duck is going on this cover. DG Chichester.
Exactly. It's just quack quack, and then go from there. So, but yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just even the little touches in Tree of Knowledge, like, after Matt's funeral, Kingpin just shows up long enough to spit on his grave and, tells him to rot slowly. Yeah.
Well, that's what I mean. It felt like all the pieces were in play.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I guess that's what I felt about Tree of Knowledge. In other words, Fall from Grace, we were having to break things and throw things into such a kind of crazy, overheated, over wattage mix master, to break everything apart. Tree of Knowledge, while it was crazy, the ground had settled. And to me, it allowed for those moments. It allowed for those moments of a little bit more quietude, which were significant to building the world. Even Matt burying, the character from Fall from Grace, or like you said, the Kingpin just coming to the grave. And I just had that in my mind. I mean, that was just like a moment I was waiting to do, of just him coming there and spitting and saying rot, and that was just, a lot of fun to do.
And it just seems so more realistic to me because, again, a lot of times in this genre, you'll get the villain going, no, I was supposed to be the one to kill you or whatever. No, Kingpin's like, I don't care. Good. Good. Someone killed you. Good. That's one less obstacle.
Yeah,
good.
You're dead. Right. It's like, that's it. You move on. And that's the fun thing about that aspect of that character, and also sort of show the way he really thought about him. Like, my nemesis, we were balances to each other, I don't know. I'm doing funny voices this morning, but, there wasn't that, I shall miss you type of thing, it's just right.
Good riddance. The trash got taken out.
Exactly.
I guess I'm a Spider-Man villain again. Okay.
Right. I guess so, I guess in today's comics, he would have like pissed on the grave. I wasn't quite there with standards and practice.
On the cover.
I was just holding out, trying to slip in the teledildonics, either the piss on the grave scene or the, slipping that word in. But
that, or he would have tried to throw Foggy in the grave too, and like bury him with
like
on top
run
of
a bag over his shoulder. It's got everybody else in it. And he dumps them all in.
20 people in that grave. Now I'm like, I thought I was excited for Black Armor before, man. Now I'm just like, oh yeah, there was this subplot and this subplot, and what's he going to tie it?
Yeah, and then you guys, we've talked enough. I'm not. There's no sequel. This is not like but there's little touches that I think feel legitimate to me, at least. Of that world. And they're fun.
We'll be the judge of that, sir.
Yeah, listen, that'll be really interesting. Not that these aren't always very interesting for me, but this will be a very interesting thing where you get to
a fresh Chichester take. Yes,
take
straight from the oven. Yes.
What is it? And what does it do? And like, how does it deliver? And what is it? Does it hold up? I said to Devin, they're going to come for me with like pitchforks and and torches.
Stay tuned for next month's episode, kids.
Exactly. It's going to happen now, Devin.
I just hope for this episode you're like, yeah, I don't remember why I did that.
No, I remember this one. This one was like probably I would say the easiest Daredevil thing I've written, which I don't think takes it down a notch, but it was this wasn't, we'll talk about this more next time, but this wasn't anything like I have not been plotting for the last 25 years, for my Daredevil quote unquote comeback or something. It was just and it wasn't like, but maybe it's just percolating there, or like you got some tools and here's an idea, and they improved on it with their suggestions, and we had a good back and forth, and then I just got to play it out.
I was going to say, yeah, I mean, I know you weren't consciously thinking of it, but yeah, maybe it was just churning in your subconscious, kind of like Axel's Infernal right now on Patreon. Go check that out.
Now on
Perfect place.
Perfect place. Well, we'll gather up your questions for next time, and then we'll jump into.
I was going to say, be prepared. That brand new issue. There may be questions for this thing. Yeah. So
anything else on Tree of Knowledge? Or are we feeling good?
I think I'm good now. No.
If you haven't read it, you need to read it.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying.
Yes.
Especially now with a new, fresh perspective of 2023.
Yeah, I do, but that's the thing. I think actually it's a really weird story, and somebody had said this to me, and I took it and it was a compliment. I actually think if you read the story now, it actually it doesn't, it's like, yeah, that's the world.
Yeah. When you look at the date, 1994.
And there is we have this, the way people are using technology, and it wasn't me projecting, it was me filtering, right? It was me taking all of these influential things that I was reading and saying, that feels right to me. That feels right to me. And then channeling those into a new, story. This, I'm going to read from this little review again. Technology terrorists out to hijack the infobahn are turning New York City upside down. Collectively known as the Silicon Pirates, their agenda is nothing short of internet anarchy, and only one man stands in the way. No, this is neither the plot of the latest techno-paranoia page-turner nor a state-of-the-art gaming conceit, but rather a surprisingly literate and informed storyline in Marvel Comics' Daredevil. So that's the point at which I realized that was my story. But not to pat myself on the back, but I mean, it's sort of did observe all those things. And I think if you do read it today, it doesn't necessarily feel dated. It just feels like, yeah, that's the world we live in, which is just, again, kind of weird that it was written all that time ago.
This young upstart writer, D.G. Chichester, has crafted a techno. Yeah.
And I think that's the rush of, that's the one unfortunate thing about the rush of comics, or at least the way that I was doing them. Other people were.
No, you put out something good, and then it's like next month, it's like there's something else. So it's
that's the thing. And if in a different world, in a different application of who I could have been and the way I could have done things, not necessarily just in Daredevil alone, but I think this should have been threaded out more. Well, again, I got knocked off the book. I probably would have threaded this out more. I would have pulled out that, the street finds its own uses for things more, throughout these bunch of next stories. I would have liked to play this cyberpunk Daredevil, not again, that he's technology driven, but that what does that street mean that is not just repeating, it's the gritty streets of Hell's Kitchen. Well, what if not the gritty streets of Hell's Kitchen that are littered or infused with these things that are percolating up, and how do they affect people, and so on and so forth. But we have this to enjoy. So let's do that.
Yeah. Just the timing too would have been interesting, because it's like right now he is playing a con man, and it's like, well, what's the difference between me and there's people actually conning people using this technology and stuff.
Right. Yeah. Totally. All right. So we know what our topic is next time. You're gonna ping me on air dates, and we'll figure it out from there, because it is close to the holidays. So
I was gonna say I want to do it that. I mean, I would be down for it, but I mean, I don't know that week. Yeah, with anyone else, both of your holidays, but
All right, we'll work around your boys' schedule. It's fine.
I can't do it that Saturday. I mean, we can end this episode and we can talk about this.
Yeah.
Wrap this up.
All right. So kids, let's send us your thoughts. Again, brand new issue, hot off the presses next time. Daredevil Black Armor #1. So read it. Send us your thoughts. Send them quickly, because we may turn around quickly and do an episode. So send us your reviews, because we don't want Dan's mom's review to be the only review we have for that issue. So
she won't even read it. So
she'll just she's gonna slab it.
She's gonna write to the slab. We're gonna take it right to CCG. But no, that's good. Actually, we'll figure out the dates. But that would be questions certainly for folks who are listening.
Yes.
But your reviews, let's read them out loud and have my skin either glow or burn away, depending on it. Love to hear what people think of it.
He needs some more new Daredevil reviews. That Wired one, it's been a while. We need new Daredevil reviews.
Yes, exactly.
Wired, if you're still in business, please, let's get another review.
I cannot coast on that Wired review anymore. So we need new stuff.
He needs a wall of reviews. All right.
Totally.
So yeah, kids, send us all the reviews, the questions, the thoughts, capesandlunatics@gmail.com, or you can also send voicemail 614-382-2737. So send them for the man. All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the past work. Thank you for what we're about to receive.
And thank you guys. Always fun. And I'll stick around for a sec after I kick out and you kick me off the show and wrap it up. But thank you guys, listeners, bit.ly /Axel's Infernal, Kickstarter. Have fun with that too.
I was going to say, Axel's Infernal. Yes. All right, kids. This man loves the devil. Good night.